the policies in place ensure the permanence of homelessness.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on 23 cable stations from Vermont to New York City, on the internet at thestruggle.org. What can you say about the latest Middle East mayhem? Well, we'll start by condemning the murders of the 3 Israeli teenagers and the lynching of Mohammed Abu Khudair and all the other murders of Palestinians in recent months. Obviously, the deliberate killing of the unarmed Israeli teens were foul murders. They were really just kids, and of course they shouldn't have been harmed. The Jewish paper The Forward has a piece speculating that their killings were carried out by a Hebron clan known for its violence and suicide actions. Maybe. Supposedly, the Palestinian Authority police told the Israelis at once about the 2 missing men who are believed to be suspects. But that didn't prevent the Israeli government from condemning the Palestine Authority, going on a surge of raids, ransacking homes, arresting upwards of 500, and killing 10 Palestinians. Then Israelis filled social media pages with incitement. One Facebook page called for the killing of a Palestinian prisoner every hour until the 3 teenagers were released. The American paper, the far-right Jewish Press, happily told about a petition signed by 100,000 who called for the Israeli government to cut off all electricity and water to Palestinians. After the Israeli bodies were found, Jewish mobs rioted in Jerusalem. Websites and social media called for revenge. Before any arrest or conviction of the suspects, their homes were blown up or ransacked. Then Mohammed Abu Khudair was kidnapped and killed and his body burned. It was just like a clan lynching in the Old South. The corporate media talks about it as a revenge killing, but that ignores all the killings of Palestinians that went on before the 3 Israelis were kidnapped. For example, the infamous 2 Palestinian youths who were killed by Israeli snipers. In the case of Yusuf Shawamra, who was shot by an Israeli soldier as he was trying to pick some wild vegetables. These killings, all unpunished. President Obama actually criticized the last lynching, but he has not noticed or noted the hideous level of racism and calls for killing going on daily inside of Israel. Israelis tell us about it. Writing in an Israeli paper, Haaretz, Chaim Shalev wrote, "But make no mistake, the gangs of Jewish ruffian man-hunting for Arabs are no aberration. This was no one-time outpouring of uncontrollable rage following the discovery of the bodies of the 3 kidnapped students. Their inflamed hatred does not exist in a vacuum. It is an ongoing presence, growing by the day, encompassing ever larger segments of Israeli society, nurtured in a public environment of resentment, insularity, and victimhood, fostered and fed by politicians and pundits, some cynical, some sincere, who have grown weary of democracy and its foibles and who long for an Israel, not to put a too fine point on it, of one state, one nation, and somewhere down the road, one leader." One last note. We told you last week about the unsuccessful appeal to Facebook to remove the page calling for the murder of prisoners. Now there's a Facebook page called "The People of Israel Call for Vengeance." We start with video from Hebron, an Israeli Jewish woman backed by soldiers chasing Palestinians off the street, calling for people to butcher the Arabs. At one point, someone is injured and the woman accuses him of play acting.
מה את מצלמת? את יחד איתם! לא מזיז לה שרוצחים את היהודים! לא מזיז לה! אבל אם הייתי יכולה להגיד לך מה אני חושבת עלייך, ישר!
וולד! רוח! כל אחד אחד!
German everything sleep, but in Hebron, no? This is really doing right. הסבל האלה, הביאו לנו אותם מהאור! מהאור במקום שיבואו לשלוש אימהות חטופות! באים הצדים, מה את מצלמת לפלה בת נבלה מי שהביא אותך? כלבה בת כלבה, לכו הביתה! אנחנו לא חגגים, אתם לא תחגגו! לכו הביתה!
מה קרה? רגע, אנחנו צריכים לתפוס שם. אנחנו
You guys really want that, huh? You guys really want to fight? You really want to get hit? Move back just a little bit.
They should fucking move back. They're the ones who come here
They're
and are
boys.
fucking aggressive.
בוא לשם, תמיר, תהיה פה, תמיר.
Let's go!
اسكت قريبة ولا يغلق دخل البيت قريبة
You don't kick him! What are you doing? You can kick him!
We're happy to say that many Israelis opposed the racism. On July 2nd, 1,000 Israelis gathered in Jerusalem to reject calls for revenge. The Israeli paper Yediot Aharonot wrote, members of Knesset, rabbis, public figures, and members of the city's pluralistic movements attended the protest. The paper also noted, despite the efforts of the demonstration's organizers, not a single widely recognized right-wing figure arrived to support the protest. As you no doubt know, the Israeli government is overwhelmingly rightist. Now here's a pressing story about the situation of the homeless in New Haven, Connecticut. A situation that is going to lead to new action on July 24th.
It's still illegal to be homeless and without a shelter bed in the city of New Haven.
Mark Colville, talk about your press release and what's going on with the situation with the homeless and the mayor.
Well, the situation is that the homeless, it's still illegal to be homeless and without a shelter bed in the city of New Haven. And that's based on the policies that the city has enacted. Number one, there's not enough shelter beds in the city, and number two, when people are refused a shelter bed and sent to the street, they're sent there with the mandate to scatter and to disappear. We proved that a few weeks ago when we took over a piece of city land which is right next to the Catholic Worker House, and we set up a very peaceful and quiet tent city where we had 5 tents set up, and we had some of our homeless brothers and sisters living there. And the city came and evicted us and arrested 2 of us and took the tents away. We did that action because we were trying to claim the human right of taking refuge together for people who have no refuge. The city made plain by their actions, and subsequently in a meeting with the mayor, in which we were told that they don't have an answer to our question about where the homeless should go when they don't have a shelter bed. There is no legal place, no place that a person could sleep who is homeless without a shelter bed, in which they would not be risking arrest.
Now, why do the shelters close? They close in May?
Yes, that's become a seasonal reality. When the overflow shelters, which is what they call the shelter on Howard Avenue, an overflow shelter. And the reason for that name is that its original mission was to provide a bed for anybody who asked for one in the city of New Haven. In other words, that was supposed to ensure that everybody who was homeless would have the opportunity to sleep in a bed under a roof. The mission of the overflow shelter in recent years has been changed to just a few extra shelter beds. That doesn't cover the need of all the homeless in the city. And in fact, the real purpose of it is just to ensure that people don't freeze to death. Because as soon as the weather is warm, in early spring, they close that shelter and they don't open it up again until the temperature drops below freezing again.
But there's no magical housing that opens up in May.
That's correct. And again, when you send people to the street, you're criminalizing their lives, and that's because of the policies that are in place right now. The other thing to remember is that there is no plan for low-income housing development here in the city. Not only that, but the existing low-income housing units throughout this city are at risk, perpetually at risk, because there is no law for developers to replace low-income units one for one, which would be essential to preserving the communities of low-income people in the city, and it would be essential for getting people, permanently out of homelessness. We can't be, shrinking the numbers of low-income housing units and then say that we have a real plan to deal with homelessness.
I'm glad you got into this question of low-income housing, because people generally think homeless means utterly destitute, don't have any money at all, but there's a lot of people who just can't afford New Haven housing. Isn't that right?
That's right, and homelessness has taken on, homelessness has become much more rampant, obviously, in the cities in this country, and we know that for low-income people, even with apartments, most of them are just a few paychecks away from being on the street. So the reality of homelessness, it's because, again, the policies in place ensure the permanence of homelessness and destitution.
Now, you've met with the mayor, there were promises made, and you don't feel they're being kept?
That's right. The mayor did make several commitments involving adding more shelter beds to the shelter on Grand Avenue. She said that they would do a complete audit of that shelter, get rid of the bed bugs, which have been a major complaint, and to do whatever rehab is necessary to make that place more livable. They also, there's a policy in place called 90 days in, 90 days out, which essentially is a person can have a bed there for 90 days, assuming they can get in. But after 90 days, they're obligated to leave and not use the shelter for the next 90 days, which, according to our homeless friends, is a very burdensome policy. in large part because it makes getting back on your feet extremely hard, you know. So she promised to do.
When was this? When did she make these promises?
This was a week after they busted up our tent city. The following Thursday, we met at the mayor's office, and she made these commitments.
What date approximately?
It was May 22nd. And so today, I mean, our purpose today was to once again say publicly, where then shall we go? There still is not an answer to that question, and where are the reforms that were promised to us?
And finally, what is going to be done? What are you warning about that you are going to be doing to take further action?
Well, we've pledged to, in a month's time, roughly a month, on actually a little more than a month, July 24th, we are once again going to take a piece of city property and claim it as refuge for the homeless and for those who have been scattered. Again, it's the assertion of a human right, and we want the city to know ahead of time. We want the people of New Haven to know ahead of time that we're going to assert this right again on July 24th, July coming, and you know, we hope that between now and then, perhaps this action will be made unnecessary. That's my personal hope. But the emergency is tonight. You know, it's important for people to realize that there's all kinds of good works being done for the homeless, and there's even some larger initiatives, including the 100 Days program, which has an ambitious goal of housing all of the chronically homeless people in this city within 100 days. These are all...
Whose program is that, the 100 Days program?
Well, as I understand, it's a coalition of Columbus House and other agencies in the city, and a lot of really excellent folks who have been working with homeless and low-income people for many years. And we applaud that policy, okay? Or that initiative, but the problem again is policy. It's housing the homeless that are currently on the street will not solve the problem, because it's a problem of policy. The perpetuation of homelessness is what we're trying to deal with here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And I've been on the streets here for a couple of days. I was evicted out of my apartment, and just trying to find a place to stay now, and it is extremely hard. And I'm not originally from the city, so being in a shelter is, you know, not really my thing. The Grand Ave shelter is hideous. It's absolutely horrendous. I would never go there even if I had to. And there's just no place for people like that.
Say hideous. In what way?
Dirty, conditions are terrible. From what I hear, there's people going to the bathroom on the floors and stuff, and I just wouldn't stay there, you know. And for people like me, or people who are turned away because it's full due to, you know, not enough beds or whatever the situation is, there's no place for us to stay. And that's a big problem, and New Haven needs to take care of that. And, you know, I don't know the logistics behind it, but, you know, there needs to be a plan in place for the people who don't have a place to stay. And, you know, that's a problem, because it makes us criminals when we're not. You know, we're just people who are in a bad situation, in a bad place.
If I could ask, how did you become homeless? What kind of work do you do?
Well, I'm a mechanic. I do mechanic, auto body work, stuff like that, and the money's just not there. You know, I lost work a couple years ago. I've been out of jobs. Was trying to go back to school, and just couldn't pay the rent and got evicted. And
we close with some of the Q&A after a talk by Christopher Hedges. Our video of his speech several months ago was seen by tens of thousands of people, so we thought we should show you a little more of what he said that day.
Neither of us know Barack Obama, so this is, again, sort of trying to fathom internally what's happening within him. I think Obama is, you know, unlike Bush, who was kind of clueless, Obama is pretty bright, and he actually understands systems of power. And he serves those systems of power because in 2008, he really came in with a popular mandate to carry out significant reform. And they had all these focus groups and public relations entities had done tremendous polling and research to understand what it was we wanted and what it was he was supposed to say. And yet, as soon as he got into power, you know, from NAFTA to Guantanamo to the use of the Espionage Act, he has used the Espionage 8 times to shut down whistleblowers. The Espionage Act, which was written in 1917, between 1917 and when Obama took office in 2009, was used 3 times against whistleblowers, the first time against Daniel Ellsberg. You know, what is it, whether he is frightened, whether he's naive, whether he's not informed, in a way it doesn't matter because it's being pushed through. My own feeling is that he's probably very cynical. Unions, popular movements, radical publications, purging the universities, there's nothing left. We don't even have the vocabulary anymore to describe the class warfare that's being waged against us. And that's the difference between us and Europe, where you still have a residue of radical movements, radical unions. You know, my son, who graduated from college and is now in France in graduate school, I said, you know, if you told French students that they had to pay $50,000 a year to go to college, they'd shut the damn country down. And you know, all of those movements and organizations that once defended and protected the interests of the poor and the working class don't exist anymore. So, you know, at a time of great instability and stress, we who care about an open egalitarian society are at a huge disadvantage because we have to begin from scratch. While the powerful proto-fascist forces that have always existed in the United States, I mean, the Klan was in essence a fascist movement. 3 million members after, you know, in the 1920s, 3 million members took over whole states like Indiana. These movements are virulent and strong, embodied in the Tea Party, the lunatic fringe of the Republican Party, funded by the most retrograde elements of American capitalism, the Koch brothers and others. So in a moment of instability, you know, we've been left almost defenseless because we've got to go back and rebuild what they dismantled. But yes, we need that alternative polis. That's exactly what we have to build if we're going to save ourselves and finally, not just as a nation, but finally as a species, given the assault against the ecosystem. Elections should not occupy a huge amount of our time. We need, and I think this is the great failure of the left. You know, Karl Popper in The Open Society and Its Enemies wrote that the question is not how do you get good people to rule. Most people attracted to power, Popper wrote, are at best mediocre or venal. The question is how do you make the powerful frightened of you? And that's what we have to do. We have to rebuild movements that make the powerful frightened of us. So there's this scene in Kissinger's memoirs, don't buy the book, where it's 71, there's a huge anti-war demonstration. Nixon has taken empty city buses in a kind of wagon train circling the White House as barricades, and he's standing at the window with Kissinger wringing his hands going, Henry, they're going to break through the barricades and get us. And that's where we want people in power to be, which is why Nixon was the last liberal president we had. Not because he had a heart or he was liberal, but because he was still scared of movements. OSHA, the Mine and Safety Act, all came through Nixon. And it's not our job to take power. You know, Julian Benda, in his great book, The Treason of Intellectuals, said that we have a choice in life between serving 2 sets of principles, privilege and power or justice and truth. And the more we make concessions to those who serve privilege and power, the more we diminish the capacity for justice and truth. So let's forget about power. Let's build movements that scare the shit out of people in power. Despite my disputes with the Black Bloc, I am an anarchist in that I think power is the problem. That's what Christian anarchism is. There's a constant alienation from power, no matter who has it. And all of the openings in American democracy, as Howard Zinn pointed out in The People's History of the United States, has come from these movements that never achieved formal positions of power. The Liberty Party that fought slavery, the suffragists, the labor movement, the civil rights movement. So King goes to Memphis or Selma. You know, he's arguably the most powerful political figure in the United States because 50,000 people go with him. And, you know, even Roosevelt, in that trajectory, becomes a you know, a classic kind of liberal. He pulls things from the Progressive Party to maintain the system. So that, I mean, Roosevelt actually says that his greatest achievement was that he saved capitalism, and he was right. And I think that we have seen the effects of losing our power, whether that is through our unions, whether that is through radical political parties, through our universities, which have been corporatized, and we need to rebuild that power. But I mean, I think that we certainly want to try and put people into power who are responsive to that pressure. But I think it's a mistake for us to somehow ever trust people in power. And I think in that sense, Popper's right.
Finally, we've added a new page to our website. It's called Bit Laughs, Bitter Laughs, jibes and satire about what our leaders are doing and thinking. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller, and this is The Struggle.